We start off with a prayer. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. So we have a question before us. That is, how can we think positively in the midst of negativity? Yeah. And my counter question is, why should we ever be negative? And what is negativity? And I gave a definition, so I'll give it once more. You see, if we have a fundamental long-term purpose in life, then negativity or negative thoughts or negative actions or impulses will be anything that takes us away from the central purpose. And then what is our central purpose? And I pointed out that we may have a number of short-term purposes, depending on the circumstances, which are bound to change over the course of time. And these are quite important in the sense that there's a uniqueness to all of us. So I'm going to do what I do with children. And we have a live audience here. At least I think they're alive. And I'll ask you to look at your hands, please. Just indulge me. Is there anybody here who does not have fingerprints? I'm pleased to announce to those that this is being broadcast to, that everybody here has fingerprints. What's the significance of that? Before you were born, they were never seen before. When you die, they'll never be seen again. This is your individuality. There's no second person like you. It means there's something you can do in this life that nobody else can do or ever has done or ever will done. And you have this unique designed function that indicates an individual purpose. But there's a long-term purpose, just like a river will be varied. Still, it's heading in one direction, and all rivers are heading toward the sea. Now, supposing we are these small rivers, there's no distinction between the river that flows into, or the lake that flows over Niagara Falls and flows away. The water is the same. It doesn't matter where you find it. Even if it comes as rainfall, water is water. Chemically, 2 parts hydrogen, 1 part oxygen. No matter where you dip your toe in, you'll always find it liquid. It may vary in temperature, but it is always the same. Water is water. And so, there seems to be no purpose in life if we are meandering and not arriving at any destination in any way. And if evolution is more an unfolding, something like a seed unfolding into a vast tree. And even Jesus uses this example of the small mustard seed that grows into a vast tree where birds of the air make their nests. And the word etymologically, as I've said many times, means unfolding. And I use the example, and you'll tell me what it is, because I'm prone to repetition, of a piece of paper that I fold nicely like this, okay? And all you do is, please will you unfold it? Evolution, yes, there's change over time. Nothing new was created. It's the same piece of paper. One was in folded condition, the other is unfolded. And so I quoted from Swami Vivekananda from this book of Raja Yoga. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this from within. We don't have to go any further than that, because there's an effect of that. The effect, of course, is that there's full control. Control of what? Internal nature as well as external nature. Internal nature, otherwise we call it the mind or thought. So we have to learn to manifest this potential. Swami Vivekananda gives us the clue. Based on our psychology, our understanding, what is the mind? There are 4 aspects to the mind. We have a feeling aspect, we have a thinking aspect, rational aspect, we have a willing aspect, and we have the capacity to harmonize the whole mind. It's called meditation. So therefore, there are four approaches necessarily that can be taken individually. It's probably better to take them collectively. So he says one or more or all of these and be free. He couches this in the language of philosophy or dedicated work, or meditation, that is psychic control, he puts it, or love of God. One or more of these and be free. Now, the easiest method is love of God, actually, in this day and age. Previously, in a more sophisticated time, it would have been something different. But now, as we have it, where people are highly emotional, then taking that energy that we call emotion and steering it toward our purpose seems to be the way for most people, dominantly. That doesn't mean to say we give up thinking. We have to balance everything with proper reasoning and proper action and all the rest of it. So, what is negative thinking except emotional? It is emotion that deviates us most, gives us a detour to our purpose, which is this unfolding. When we try to unfold the mind, of course it's unfolding already, because we have arrived at a situation where we are all humans, most of us. And so, with that in mind, there's a human capacity. I was talking earlier. We have the capacity to transform discord into harmony. And just in case you forgot many of my examples, I'll give you the example again in a story form. And you recognize the story, but I have no problem about repeating. So here's the repeated story. And because it's a story, I suppose we have to begin once upon a time. All right, once upon a time, there was a farmer and a neighbor, and the farmer had to go through the neighbor's field in order to get water from the river. And the neighbor had a little bit of a grudge. This is my land. How can this person pass through my land free of charge? Never mind, I'll respect the law of the land, but I'll make it difficult for him. Every time he comes with his bucket to collect the water, I'll have a bucket of my own. I'll arrange all the cow dung that I collect, and I'll throw it over him in an unexpected way. Sometimes I'll hide behind a rock and throw it. Sometimes I'll be up a tree. He won't know where the next bucket is coming from. And I'll make this man's life hell. Anyway, 1 year of this passed. Around about the end of the year, a knock on the neighbor's door. It's the farmer. The neighbor looks sheepishly out. He has one of these chain locks, looks, oh dear, retribution is coming my way. Anyway, he looks at the farmer's face and sees that it is quite calm and happy and joyful, opens the door, and there the farmer is holding a most exquisite rose flower. So fragrant, so colorful. The best example of a rose that he's ever seen. Magnificent. And his eyes open in astonishment. And the farmer says, I want to give this to you. You see, I need an explanation, give you an explanation. All that cow dung you gave me, I planted roses with it. Now I'm exporting roses and I want you to have this on one condition. Now, what is that? The neighbor says. This forthcoming year, please can you double the quota? So the point is, from all the crud of life, all the so-called discord and difficulties and so on, all the negativities that we have the capacity to make something good. We can transform it. And nature itself gives us this transforming capacity because a rose flower doesn't complain that it came and was nurtured by all the dung, by the compost. It doesn't say, I want to be like compost. It says, I want to be different. And so there's a nurturing thing within life. Nature gives us many, many obstacles, and we shouldn't complain about them. And I think it's an Irish saying that I heard some time or other. It is better to light a candle than curse the dark. Now, it depends on our will. And just to remind you of that famous and most favorite of mine, sixth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. See, Udared Atmanatvanam, it begins. You can raise yourself up by yourself or lower yourself by yourself. You are your own best friend or your own worst enemy. It's up to you. Every child at age 9 should learn this lesson of independence. You're on your own. So it's time to outgrow all the childish things, and we really examine all these deviations that we would define as negativities. We will find that they are characterized by childishness. And childishness is accompanied by emotion that we learned when we were young, when we were 1 foot and everybody else was 6 foot, and we learned a strategy, probably culminating in the year 2. We learned that if you scream and cry and are persistent and make a fuss, you can wear the person who's 6 foot down. You can master that person. You can make such a demand and make things so unpleasant that it's a battle of wills. And probably, in my personal opinion, the worst thing you could ask a child to do is make a selection. What do you want? What does a child know about what they want? I want this, I want that. Who says you want that? I want ice cream. Okay. Here's a ton of ice cream. Be happy. After a short while, no, I have tummy ache. Oh, I see. So it wasn't so much heaven after all. All right, you learned a lesson. Until the next time. And so what are we? Instead of playing with children's toys, we're playing with golf balls, and that's the only difference. Cricket balls, or whatever it is. People come from Mars and see there's some kind of strange occupation that they do. I'm not sure whether they're hunting or gathering or what, but they have this tiny ball, probably a few inches in diameter, and a stick. And they try to hit this poor thing and try to get it driven to a long distance with the idea of putting it into this tiny hole. And if they succeed, everybody cheers and celebrates. It's a wonderful thing. We have no idea what it's all about. Never mind. It must be part of their culture. In Zimbabwe, we call this game damn it, because invariably you'll miss the ball. And that's what a Martian hears. He has no understanding what it is. So we have to take stock because we're independent. We're independent of the mental field that is giving us a jumping mind that goes here and there, and a body that is subject to change and sickness and disease. And we have to take these two irregular things and assert something very important. The only thing that we can have control over is our body and mind. That's all there is. And we have to make an effort to do it. Now, the effort is called discipline. We call it tapasya. That means going against our normal habit, creating a new habit. And we don't like change. Unless it's money change, we don't like it. So, how do we form a new habit? Well, we form one which is better, which is more pleasant, one which is more attractive, one which has a permanence in mind. In short, one which is directed toward the development of our ultimate purpose or goal. But we have to be sure that it is our goal. This book I referred to, Raja Yoga, has that section. It's essentially a commentary on yoga philosophy as espoused in Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Sutra means a thread. It's a very efficient system which says, we only give you a phrase. From that phrase, you remember everything we discussed about the subject. All you need is a trigger. And so these are aphorisms or sutras. Sutra means a thread. And it comes, of course, in English language, in the medical field, suture, which means, a thread, you have stitches. So it comes in 4 chapters, 4 sections. And each section is a progression of how you should get an ultimate thing. What is the ultimate thing? It's in the 4th chapter. It is called freedom. Kaivalya, isolation, independence, freedom, because we're all looking for freedom. Every movement, social movement, now or even in history, is to get out of a sense of enslavement. We express it as social freedom or gender freedom or many different kinds of freedom. And so freedom really is our goal. And we get this from this clue. Each soul is potentially divine, like a seed is potentially a tree. And we have to manifest that. How? From outside? No, from within. And what is the result? The result is also a kind of method. That is controlling nature, which can be divided into 2 sections. External, the familiar world around us, and internal. And we do the external control by controlling the internal. Everything, all your potential, all your power, all your inspiration does not come from outside. It comes from inside. It is all from within you. It is already there, in other words, just as the tree is already there within the seed. It just requires developing, opening up. That is unfolding, just like the piece of paper was unfolded into something which is blooming. Now, this is the reason, and I mentioned it so many times before, this is the reason why Charles Darwin, who writes this Origin of the Species, with ideas along with Wallace, biologists, why he seldom uses this term evolution. He uses descent by modification. He realizes the trap. The trap is, if there's something that is unfolded, it's there in the first place. This is what we call involution. You cannot have evolution without involution. The thing must be involved. That life, which unfolds a potential seed so subtle into a fully grown tree, must be involved in the whole process all the way to the end. And so the Upanishads tell us that we're headed for a certain destiny, but it is simply our origin anyway. We're going back to where we started. Many people don't want to do it. They're afraid of losing their individuality until they outgrow that idea, I am the body, I am the mind. You don't say I'm the car. You say I'm the owner or the driver of the car. You don't say I'm the shoe. You say I'm wearing the shoe. The language betrays it. You say my mind, my body, and so it goes on. So this all you know before. Now, when you talk, therefore, about negative things, the first thing you have to do is you have to make an assessment. At any given time in my mental field, what is allowing my attention to deviate from manifesting this divinity from within? And this, fortunately, we have a classification. Classification is a 3-fold classification, which you all know of by now. And these are described as binding elements, binding things that carry with them a quality. It's not that they are the quality, because you cannot have a quality by itself. You cannot have whiteness by itself. It must be white milk, white paint. Something has to be there. And so 3 things are there. These are labeled Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas. They are gunas, or binding elements, ropes that bind us. Now, when we view whatever is happening in the mental field, we now can classify whatever's happening in the mental field. Is it of the quality of laziness? Is it tardiness? Is it lackluster? Is it essentially dullness? Is it an extreme darkness? Because tamas literally means darkness. And the more you're steeped in it, the more ignorant you are in any context. So you can review the mind and see which of these friends are dominating. And then there's rajas. Rajas, extremely energetic, goal-orientated, future-orientated. The problem with that is future orientation gives anxiety. And when you're driven, it's much better than laziness. But by the same token, it will give you pain because it will deviate from your central purpose. Your central purpose is that you want your freedom and want to take everything away that is blocking it. The central thing that's blocking our freedom is mixing things up, mixing the seer with the seen. That requires some explanation. Whatever you experience requires three things: a perceiver and something that is perceived, and a process of perceiving. These three things. Now, there's a connection between them all, but there's also this distinction. You can never see yourself. The seer can never be seen. A knower can never be known. As soon as you say a knower can be known, the next question is, who knows it? You have to go a little further. As soon as you say, I can see the seer, well, who sees the seer? The seer can never be seen. The obvious example is you can never see yourself physically. Then people say, no, I stand in front of a big mirror. And actually the mirror is a liar, as we all know. Because in the mirror there are wrinkles and old age and so on and so forth. I'm sure I'm not like that. Well, but you see, who is seeing it? You can see a tip of a nose, you can see an arm, you can see a hand waving, you can see the legs and so on, all separate parts. But every part you see suggests that there is something that is an aggregate. And anything that is joined together as an aggregate is liable to disintegrate and have its day. So we are living in a mortal framework and thinking that we are the prophet, the profiteer, and the actor. We're thinking that we alone are doing things and we alone are profiting from it. And the result is that any restriction on our freedom will give us pain. Why? Because it's driven by an assumption. There's a hollow in me that can be filled from the outside. And when we really understand, when the revelation comes, we understand that it is no gaps, there are no voids, there are no hollows, that inside is only full and free and perfect. There is nothing more to fill. There are no deficits anywhere. We just have to realize it. And once we realize it, we understand that it comes from time to time, the understanding comes, and that gives us a clue to a permanent solution. And that is to remove all the obstacles. And this is mentioned in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Good and bad deeds are not the direct causes of transformations. What we have to do is open up some floodgates. And the example given is a farmer in the field and wants to bring water to the field down a number of different channels, and can successfully do it once he opens the floodgates. And as you all know, I tend to use a different example. My beloved Zimbabwe, with the largest man-made dam in the world. And there is called Kariba. I think at least one participant here knows it, and maybe has seen it. There's a vast lake. It has a weather system of its own. It looks like an ocean when you look out, your horizon, like looking out to sea. And what's holding all that water back? It's a well-constructed, well-engineered dam wall with a curved structure to hold the water back, with floodgates. And periodically you have to open the gates. What's the alternative? We'll use a funny example. You can take a bucket and a teaspoon and try and transfer the water from the one side to the other laboriously. And if you believe in transmigration, life after life, you'll be occupied with this task. And it's a great, great analogy because it's exactly what we're doing. How do we get this freedom? Open up the floodgates, learn the art of doing that, removing the obstacle. The water will flow by itself. We don't have to worry about it. So the key is to remove the obstacles. And that requires a certain mindset that says, no obstacle is insurmountable. We are equipped to overcome all the obstacles. And we do it by making adjustments to our valuations. So, if we want our freedom and our fullness in life, there is a method. And it's inborn. It's an inborn urge that is there in everyone. And it's an urge towards freedom. That itself is the means. An irresistible urge that moves us forward and is inherent in nature, just like it's inherent in water to flow. Once we allow it, theistically, from a devotional point of view, it is called divine grace, and it is always prepared to flow, provided we open up the floodgates. But it requires the idea that I'm independent. I'm already free. Freedom and independence synonymous. That I have the capacity to steer my attention in any chosen way I like. And we do it already. All of this is repetition, and I'm not afraid to repeat it. So, some great examples are there. Supposing there is a loud noise outside these windows, a car accident. Immediately, probably, all of you will get up from this uninteresting talk and rush to the window to find out what's going on, who's hurt, and so on. See, we have the capacity to, our attention can be redirected instantly. We forget about our current circumstances. We're already doing it. It's just a question of taking it and steering it in the useful direction that leads to our freedom. We can assess at any given moment what is the condition of the mental field, and then give it a turn. What is that transformational turn? We occupy the mind with different things. We occupy the mind with thought, anecdotes, pictures, ideas. These are the tools for tuning the human instrument called attention. And only fragments initially can be seen in this world, can be heard or touched, but the totality, that's different. The totality is stainless. The totality is the thinker itself or himself. We can put any gender we like on it. It's not the fragmented, but it can think the fragments out. Whatever you thought, whatever you think, will ultimately condense. Again, using the analogy of water, where do we get our rivers from? Isn't it from rainfall? The experts on this rainfall are called the Irish people. Where does all the rainfall come? Did it come from the locality of Ireland? No. It came from the sea somewhere. Evaporation of moisture. It could happen on the other side of the earth. And it collects as clouds, and the earth turns, and the clouds also rotate. And we get the rainfall. Once there's a build-up there, it builds up to a crescendo and bursts, a cloud burst, and we get the rainfall here. Where did it evaporate from? The ocean's far away. In this same way, every thought gets evaporated, it gets collected and condenses as a scene in front of you. This is an infallible law because the thinker is infallible and every thought will be carried to its destination unless suitably neutralized by another thought, which could take the form of a doubt, a fear, a temptation, whatever it is. Some deviation will be there. So if I want to learn, well, a teacher is provided. My want manipulates things so that a teacher appears. When I want to see, then God provides the eye to see and the ear to hear and so on. And all of these are provided as subtle elements that condense as the world in front of us. And the collector is a mind, not your mind. There's no such thing as your mind. One mind, cosmic mind. And so in philosophy and in the yoga philosophy and Sankhya philosophy and so on, we have to apply, and I say this ad nauseum to everybody, more or less at every talk, we have to be aware of 24 categories or fragments. Why do I say fragments? Well, I should add the word seeming fragments. It looks like a fragmented universe. Just like a rainbow looks like the fragmented sun. The sun doesn't fragment. The light only appears like that to the human eye, and we see 7 colors. We're incapable of seeing ultraviolet and infrared. We have to use special equipment for it. The great James Webb telescope is using the infrared and getting details from that. We can't see it, but the interpretation to us gives us an insight of what is there. And those who are following the adventures of this highly sophisticated advancement on the Hubble telescope can now see further than we have ever seen before. And now we're seeing galaxies that should not be there. Well-formed, simple, and all nice and neat. It's not the chaotic world that science has predicted, or certain models have predicted anyway. In this same way, using this as an analogy, we are capable of seeing further and further because we have the equipment to do it. We don't have to invent a telescope to do it. We are fully equipped to take the consciousness, which is our normal birthright, and stop it flowing outward to the objects and make it poised in a central place, as it were. And the more we go inward, the more will be our discovery, the vaster it'll be, the more subtle it'll be, and the more truthful it'll be, because the more permanent it'll be. The highest generalizations will be there, the more we look in, the more we investigate. But we have to condition the mind in order to have this penetrating vision. And that is done through selflessness. That means an absence of all desires, an absence of all assumptions that says we are defective. In this way, we have to do away with the psychology that provides us with health, be it mental or physical. As soon as you take a pill, you are saying, I have no faith in my body. As soon as you say, I am in trouble, please save me, you have no faith in the resources, which collectively we call God. So we have to reform the mind. We have to convince ourselves, first of all, of the principles of the possibility of freedom, and then, more importantly, the practice. Practice of what? Well, Yoga Sutras, we don't have to go far into them to discover the means. The means are constant practice of what? Of discrimination, discernment. A reevaluation of what we see. Using the poetry and artistic nature of our imagination. Instead of revaluing the world, we can see it as, or the earth, we can see it as God's footstool, for example. The Bible will provide us with that image, for example. Or we can see that what we view as separate things is nothing more than the expression of a divine flowing grace that appears as a finished product, seemingly finished product. Seemingly because it's not the finished product, it's just one phase in a cycle. A seed begets a tree begets a seed. Sooner or later the tree falls down, its life continues. When we have the capacity to go the extra mile in what we see and what we experience, and come to the conclusion, Lord, you are there dressed up in this way, using all the multiple examples that we have at our disposal. Mother Nature gives us all these examples. Now, at the time when Swami Vivekananda was giving his commentary, he was living in the era where Darwinism had just been really become popularized and was a subject of the latest biological theories and thinkings and way of viewing things. And two principles are there, principally. Struggle, that is, the survival of the fittest. And secondly, it is sex selection. And so what that means is that you survive and the best at finding food, and the best at sourcing food, and the best at becoming strong, you will survive. And the others will be left behind. Natural selection. And the other one is the one that propagates the species the most will survive. You take crocodiles, for example. They're very ancient creatures. They've been very successful. And unfortunately, for you and for me, mosquitoes also have been very successful. So, does this apply to man? How can it? These genetic directives, man is designed to overcome them. Because you see, if we were to follow this trend, then we would fight and bite and scratch and create a super dog, like a super dog or a superman. And maybe we think that this is a good idea and we have wars. It's inbuilt in us, but it doesn't elevate us in any way. It's simply behaving like every other species behaves, but in a more sophisticated way and a more destructive way. But it is all based on egocentricity, a kind of false sense of ownership. This is my land, or this is my nation, or this is my culture. I have a right to be here, and so on. The Bhagavad Gita only gives us one right. What is it? The right to work. That's all. It's the only right we have. And so we have a right to work, and we work, and that's all there is to it. Why is that the only right? Because it's not ours. The energy doesn't belong to us. The food supply doesn't belong to us. We're all running around on canned sunshine. We're all running on solar energy. There's nothing else. You think that solar energy is a panel put on your rooftop. No, the whole thing runs on solar energy. The whole thing runs on plant power, which has the capacity to do this photosynthesis. We don't exactly know how it works. We know more or less, but the details are still missing. We think maybe it's in the quantum world that the ultimate solution is there. But you and I don't have that art. We don't open our palms and all the sunlight is transformed into energy. So plants know how to do that. And we munch and crunch on that, and we huff and puff on the oxygen that is supplied, and we give back carbon dioxide, and then we give it back in such quantities that we create greenhouse gases possibly, and warm the climate possibly. Anyway, you see, it is all designed for one purpose, So is it fighting and biting and scratching and making a super species? And then what about a Jesus? What about a Buddha? What about a Ramakrishna? They would be utter failures. They weren't interested in eating and drinking and fighting. And they weren't interested, as far as we know, in propagating the species. They all led a monastic life. And so Jesus makes a famous statement about eunuchs. Some people are eunuchs for this or that. Others are for the sake of the kingdom of heaven, is his statement. Very clear statement. So unlike the animal kingdom, we don't select a mate and then on the honeymoon night, rush at each other, fight and bite and scratch, and create a super child. That doesn't happen. So there's this series of inbuilt moral feelings, moral understandings that says, no, we have a higher purpose in mind. And we can circumvent these genetic directives. We have the capacity to do it if we want. It's a mastery, a certain level of control, which is in our hands. And we have every way of directing it. But you see, in the Victorian times, Darwin's idea was that nature is primitive. Nature is raw. It's savage. But Swami Vivekananda has a different idea. And it's based on the very last sutra under this chapter of freedom. It says, the resolution in the inverse order of the qualities, bereft of any motive of action for the Purusha, that requires a little explanation, is Kaivalya, that is isolation or freedom, or it is the establishment of the power of knowledge in its own nature. Now he gives a commentary. He says, and I've read this multiple times before, but we can read it again. Nature's task is done. This unselfish task, what does it mean is done? It means it leads you to this unfolded condition. Nature's task is done, culminating in freedom. Not against you, but for you. Like a mother, like you say, Mother Nature, Mother Earth, Mother Nature. This unselfish task is not against us, not blocking us. Unselfish task. It's not crude, which our sweet nurse, not our savage nurse, our sweet nurse, nature, had imposed on herself. Because when we talk about nature, we can't exclude ourselves. You say nature, oh, I like going out in nature. See, I feel calm when I'm in nature. You forget that you're also part of nature. And so she gently took the self-forgetting soul by the hand. What is our suffering? We've forgotten our own true nature. Nature says, come on, my child, let's go. Takes us by the hand, as it were, and showed him all the experiences in the universe, all manifestations, revealing us, you see, man on a tiny dot of 8 billion other people, on a tiny dot called the Earth, in what we call Goldilocks conditions, on the outer suburbs of a galaxy where it's not too hot and not too cold, in Goldilocks language. In the suburbs there, not in the intense traffic of the center where the alleged black hole sits. Some may dispute the black hole idea. I'm one of those, but let's take it for the time being. Spinning around like that as a group of galaxies, and the whole sun and our whole solar system is moving around and taking somewhere over 200,000 years to go around the whole thing. And a group of galaxies, just like a cluster, like a family, and something like several trillions of them, as far as we know. 200 billion estimated, 200 billion suns and so on, all of that. Is astonishing. Even in our solar system, going out to the outer edge as Voyager has done, we can look back and we won't even see the Earth. It's not there. It's not visible. Not even with the telescope. So it's taking us, and yet we have the capacity to understand the universe and its mechanisms at the smallest subatomic level to the vastest level, at least some comprehension, at least some models, at least the capacity to construct mathematics around it, and the capacity to appreciate it with an artistic eye, with a sense of culture. All manifestations bringing him higher and higher through various bodies till his last glory came back. And he remembered his own nature. Aha, that's it. There's a wonderful story, of course, in a parable form that Ramakrishna uses. And when I first met my teacher, he told me the story. And the story was the famous story about the lioness who got caught in a flood and perished, but she was pregnant, and a lion cub was there shivering. And a crowd of goats took compassion and brought the lion cub up as a goat, this little lion cub bleating. And then a hungry lion came along, saw the goats, and saw this peculiar creature there bleating like a goat. Anyway, as a lion is wont to do, it catches one of the herd, and its diet is meat, but is curious to see this tiny little cub. Takes it by the scruff of the neck, and it's shivering. Says, "What are you doing amongst all this?" And the lion cub bleats. Quite thin, it's grown up on grass. And a vegetarian lion, you know. And says, "Well, I'm a goat." "No, you're not." Drags him to the river. "Go on, look inside. See me, see you, same thing." Still, the lion cub doesn't understand. And then the lion forces the meat down the throat. And as soon as he tastes the blood, he starts roaring, recognizing his own nature. In this way, we'll recognize our own nature, even as vegetarians. Then the kind mother went back the same way she came for others who also have lost their way in the trackless desert of life. It seems like that, a trackless desert of life. And thus is she working, without beginning and without end. We don't think there was a beginning. We don't think there was an end. Is eternally moving, eternally going like this. Even if you take an origin, something like a Big Bang, there's something preceding, and now many, many people are questioning and saying, well, maybe there's not a singularity, doesn't make any sense. Maybe there are eons. Roger Penrose, for example, has a cyclic universe and so on. But you see, these ancient people understood everything goes back to its potentiality and goes out again, like inhaling and exhaling is their idea. So nature is doing this. And thus is she working, without beginning, without end, and that through pleasure and pain. Don't complain. Pleasure and pain is part of the contrast. We learn through it, through good and evil, pairs of opposites. The infinite river of souls is flowing into the ocean of perfection of self-realization. Glory unto those who have realized their own nature. May their blessings be on us all. He concludes with that. So also in this, there's a passage that tells us about the root being there. The root being the origin of a species. What is the root? Thought. Thought is the root. Whatever we think, we bring to fruition. And it is thought that presents us with the difference in speciation. Because you can have a pet goat and you can feed the goat with bananas. And I can have bananas and the goat, my friend, can have bananas. But you see, I won't grow horns on my head and the goat will not give lectures. There's an inbuilt root which is there, derived from the train of thought that we have. This is the speciation that we have. And so this is the evolution, the evolved principle, evolving not only locally, but also universally. Mother Nature taking us by the hand. And there we have to understand the nature of nature itself, how nature works, sometimes in our favor, sometimes against us, but we know how to master. And the example I normally give is if you want to lower a bucket down into a well, it's easy. It's bringing it back up that's the difficulty. And we have to use an extra horsepower to do it. You can defy gravity only by your muscular strength. You can pull the water up. But do you respect gravity? Yes, you can respect gravity when it helps you. But when it doesn't help you, then you have to use your muscular power against it. In this same way, we have to mobilize the muscle of thought and recognize where we have to steer our attention more and more. The idea of love of God is a natural way of doing it because we don't have to renounce anything. All systems require renunciation, but we don't have to do it in a consciously cultivated way. And the example I gave to somebody earlier was like this. They said, I asked them how long they had been married, knowing that they'd been married for, I think they said some 12 years or something. And I said, presumably you love your husband, don't answer that question. And then you see what sustains your love. Did you have to renounce all the other loves? No. That one love overshadowed all the rest. It was sufficient. When we develop something that is more attractive, that is more illuminating, that doesn't carry pain with it, that is devoid of egocentricity, that is completely selfless, then we don't need anything else. And we can cultivate that in a beautiful way. And so, in that same way, the very sap of the universe, which is God's will, creative power, entering into a certain field with a root, then a human being's root produces a kind of bloodstream from the various foodstuffs that are taken in as food, as material, raw material, and they're processed and made into a uniform bloodstream. And that food that we bring in contains potentially nourishment that only the human body can use. Well, other animals can use it too, but the kind of food that we take in as human food. And so this freely flowing thing carries the multi-purpose nourishment. And every cell is standing exactly to attention, waiting for it, and knows how to transform all of this automatically. Without the ego getting in, it happens automatically. So do you believe in reincarnation? You have to, because all your cells are reincarnating, even now as we speak. The old ones are dying off. New ones are being manufactured constantly from this foodstuff. And so what's the worth of keeping this body? It's because we have a purpose. There's an investor that invests life in you because it has a purpose. And so when that's finished, then the structure around it, can be taken off, just like a scaffolding on a building. When its purpose is finished, the scaffolding comes off. What is nature, therefore? It's a favorable arrangement of whatever thought you put in. Whatever thought, that is what your destiny will be. Whatever force you generate, whether it's a thought, whether it's a plan, whether it's an intention, whether it's a resolution, a determination, an affirmation, a hope, a confidence. You can put that in yourself. Strong, true, wise, full, free, truth, beauty, goodness, love, harmony. Put that in constantly. There's no room for any negativity. What negative thought can come in? God made the world and saw that it was good. Why do we think it's bad? It's our own stupidity, because we're not seeing it as he sees it, sitting on his throne and looking at things from there. And so, when the significance of all these terms of resolution, intention, and so on is understood and found out and followed by a movement inside, what is called attention or thought, same thing, when it goes in as a probe and makes a picture of what is to be done, it condenses on the other side. And so thinking, what is the subject of it? What thinking matters. Thinking matters is a kind of play on words, because thinking produces the material world, the matter, so-called matter. There's a cosmic creative force that is loosely called thought. And sometimes it's called resolution, sometimes it's called determination, sometimes it's called affirmation, sometimes it's an ideal, a purpose, an aim. So should we have an aim? Should we have a goal? Yes. Each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity from within, but we don't focus on that. We leave it. And then we work on the process toward it. Living in this present moment, re-educating the mind on the basis of this resolution that we make, and filling the mind with pictures of what we intend to do and when we intend to do it. And that creates a kind of internal vortex, a kind of whirlpool, which has a pulling power, so that thought acts as a suction, drawing things toward us. If we want to draw goodness, that will be our suction. If we want to love, we'll be loved. If we want to be hate, we'll be hated, is a simple law of reciprocity. So the passage is, as long as the root is there, its consequence, the fruit or the fructification, that should take place. Nothing can stop it, in other words. In what form will it take shape? The species, the goat, for example, on the one side eating the same food, and the Swami on the other side eating the same food. But because the root is different, the manifestation will be different. If I want to pull people's legs, I can expect to be a crocodile. So this is divine grace flowing, and it flows in 5 intrinsic ways. These ways are the subtle forces that combine and manufacture. These are called tanmatras. And understanding these principles is vital to our practical understanding of things. If we find that there's a negative, that is something deviating our mind away from our purpose, allow it to run. Don't stop it. Resist ye not evil. But then, in the next few seconds, next one, put something positive, something joyful, joy-bearing, truth and beauty and goodness and love and harmony, and learn to do that. Learn to do the filling, and let that saturate the mind until it becomes spontaneously joyful. And the spontaneous joy of a mind is a suction. It draws joyful things toward you, positive things toward you. Don't complain about your environment. You are the one that created it. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.